May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be free from harm. May all beings love life. May all beings awaken. Welcome to another Cuke Audio Podcast. I'm DC Puba of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, preserving the legacy of Shunryu Suzuki and those whose paths cross his, and anything else that comes to mind. I pray that you and yours are safe and comfortable, free from economic hardship, and able to get out and do whatever it is you want within the limitations of the universal precept of do as little harm as possible. So today our guest is Rick Morton, brother of Jim Morton, who was our guest last week. Rick came to Zen Center in 1966 at Sokoji. He went to Japan later in about 74, and what he does now is fine furniture, restoration, refinishing, and finishing. And so he had quite an interesting experience in Japan and in America. So let's hear what Rick has to say about all that after we've had our pause to meditate. Oh, one thing, the first minute or so of talking to Rick is we have lost. And that was my fault, and I apologize for that. It is lost forever, and there's nothing that we can do about it. So it just starts right in the middle of us talking, but at a nice starting point. So when you hear the bell, hit pause if you're of such a mind and meditate or whatever for as long as you wish. And when you're through, hit unpause. And we'll be here to hit the bell to end the meditation or whatever, and we'll give Rick Morton a call. You're sitting with Steve Stuckey's old group there in San Rafael. And what'd you say the new name was?
MZM, Marin Zen Meditation.
Yeah, and it used to be...
It used to be Dharma I.
Yeah.
That was Steve's name for it.
Yeah, why did they change it?
They changed it because people didn't like the name very much. Mm-hmm. We didn't.
Oh.
The people never liked the name that much, and we thought that something like Marin Zen Meditation would be better and kind of a more easy name to accept for people that didn't know anything about Zen.
Yeah, easy to find.
Easy to find.
Yeah, you said the teacher there now is Carol Paul.
That's correct.
And Christine Palmer retired to be a grandmother, you said. Ah.
Yeah. Retired a year ago at least. Maybe it's longer. Maybe it's 2 years. You know, time goes by when you're 78 years old.
Yeah.
6 months is like a day.
And where are you right now when we're talking?
I am in my office, which is in Sausalito, California, and my office my office has been, well, it's like a study, really. It's more, it's got a zafu, it's got a tan, it's got sitting cushions, it's got a sofa, it's got a lot of books everywhere.
Yeah. I've been in it.
Yeah, you've been in it, yeah.
Years ago, 15 years ago or something.
Well, for your listeners, for our listeners, I mean, I do antique restoration and refinishing and finishing and art restoration. And I did Suzuki Roshi's chair over again.
Oh.
You know, I'm quite happy with that. And they liked it. They YouTubed it and everything with me saying something about it.
Oh,
and
I want to get that. I want to get that.
Yeah, I mean, it looks good. I'm telling you, it looks good. I know what I'm doing, you know, because I lived in Japan for 3 years, and in the 70s, and I learned urushi, which is the Japanese lacquer.
Yeah.
And then I adapted that to things that I find here, like, and in this case, it was Suzuki Roshi's chair, ceremonial chair he sat in. So I know exactly what the colors are, and I know what the look is and everything. And I was able to keep some of it original, and then the parts that needed to be fixed, I fixed them up. And so it all went together, and it looked pretty good. It was very cool. It's one of my life accomplishments, actually.
Wow. So were you were involved with that chair earlier?
That was about like maybe 3 years ago.
Oh, well, I'm thinking about like 50 years ago.
Oh yeah. Has it been that long? I thought it was more like 20. But anyway.
Well, no, wait. I'm talking about when Suzuki was alive, and
this is the original chair when Suzuki Roshi was alive.
Yeah.
And we all saw him sitting in this red chair, and he would only use it for ceremonies.
Yeah, right.
You know, like, and I don't think he did it for the end of sesshin, though.
No.
But, you know, he did do it when you had to do it. You know, when you had to receive a teacher, you're doing some special thing.
Yeah.
When you had to receiving a guest, and he had his little whisk, you know, and he would sit in it.
So, did you work on it back then?
No, I never touched it back then.
Yeah.
It didn't need work, but by the time it got to me, it wouldn't even hold together, and it had cracks, and I had to replace a lot of the lacquer in it.
Yeah.
And I did a really good job. So it was funny. My restoration started when I was in 1965. I was carrying a mokugyo across the street at Bush Street to Sikoji, and I dropped it. It fell off, and it kind of smashed on the street. So I glued it and tied it together. And Okusan said, "Very bad, very bad." And I was going to the Art Institute then. I didn't know how to put things together, but that would have been the beginning of my
wow
my journey into Asian art restoration.
Wow. You said you worked with urushi. I remember it. It's related. Well, it's not related. It's sort of like poison oak. You got to really be careful working with it. I knew an urushi guy in Japan, and he always had rashes on his arms.
Yeah, well, you always get it. You know, I got it less than my teacher, which was like hilarious to me. But everybody that works with it has, you know, you can't really. Then you take it home and you give it to people too. You know, it's more like poison sumac than poison oak, though. I'm told. Poison oak is a lot worse than poison sumac. I've never had poison sumac, except you get a lot of little bumps. We had it in Vermont.
Poison sumac. It's and then there's poison ivy in America.
Yeah, but I've heard urushi. It's called caballero in Japanese, and the rash, and that's it's likened to poison sumac. It's a neat material, though. You know, if you go to Japan, you should visit these places that sell lacquer work, because it's such a refined artwork that seems to have been refined by the Japanese more than any other country. They took Chinese things, and then they went much further with than the Chinese ever did. I mean, there's mind-blowing things from 400 years ago I don't remember the names. These are Japanese artists. I mean, it's incredible. This would be like Paul Gauguin, or Van Gogh to us, and it's really, really powerful and strong and very authentic and original at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Incidentally, the Japanese suits, the samurai armor is made using urushi, and the bowls and the hashi, that is the chopsticks, are all urushi coated, and that's how you get this high sheen black. Now urushi is a naturally occurring epoxy in parentheses, and after it's refined, but even before it's refined, it dries in 70% humidity. It doesn't need a catalyst. So you put it in what's called an urushi bako. That's what it's called in Japan. Bako is hako for box,
Right.
So urushi bako, and that's you coat it with water on the inside, and sometimes if you need heat, you put a light bulb in, and that causes the urushi to turn hard.
Wow.
You don't need a catalyst, but by itself it turns hard, and when it's hard, it is really hard. It's like glass. It's like some kind of mineral, and it can't be redissolved by anything.
Really? Oh, that is so interesting. So our bowls, amongst bowls, for the oryoki set and the hashi, the chopsticks.
It's all urushi.
Yeah. What I remember the Noto Peninsula up in northwest Japan was famous for urushi, right?
I suppose I don't remember that, David, actually, but different parts of Japan are famous for different styles of urushi. Like Kamakura has this carved, extremely red vermilion. They makes things out of that, and then in Japan, you could also, during what's called the tsuyu, which is the part of the year that it rains all the time. You can get the urushi. You can do outside urushi like on columns because it's so humid in the country of Japan that it will actually harden the urushi. So you can do temple columns outside. You can't do that in the United States anywhere. I did all of Suzuki Roshi's bowls about 40 years ago.
Wow.
Over again, 30 years ago. And Dick Baker said they looked so much better than they ever looked originally.
Yeah.
But when I was living in Japan, I brought back, I went to an industrial art school, and I brought back a lot of things to work with urushi. So I was able to use those, and Jim has been sending me things too when he was in Japan. But I have found substitutes for urushi that look the same too.
Really? Like what?
Well, I use an epoxy, and then I color it with my urushi powders.
Mm-hmm.
Because it dries really hard and it polishes up just like urushi does. And I have these polishers from Germany because I also did because of my experience with urushi, I got attracted to this place Roche Beaubois in the 70s sold all of this high sheen black lacquer kitchens and furniture, and they would get it from Italy. And I didn't know what it was, and they didn't know what it was either. But then I found out that I could use stuff called polyester resin. And polyester resin is what they use for Yamaha pianos.
Mm-hmm.
Not urushi, but because it looks like urushi. It feels like it, but it doesn't smell like urushi. Urushi has kind of a vegetable smell. It's kind of a beautiful, earthy smell. I could take something urushi and just put it to my nose, and I can tell it's urushi. It's great.
Now, is this if it's hardened urushi, you can do that?
Yeah, you can do that if it's hardened urushi, if it's new. But if it's like years and years old, I
Right.
don't think it smells.
Right, right. Now,
But, you know,
I want to clarify something. You say
Sure.
it hardens in water?
No, it hardens in humidity.
Uh-huh.
Between 70 and 90% humidity.
That is so interesting.
That is fantastic. It is fantastic. It
Cement
really
will
is.
cement will harden in water, but not
Yeah.
many things that do.
Well, urushi. The thing about urushi is, if it was wet, urushi can be diluted. The liquid urushi, you could add water to it, and you can add paint thinner to it,
Oh,
and it'll still harden. And you could add alcohol to it. I'm not sure about the paint thinner, but lacquer thinner will kill it. So you don't want to add lacquer thinner to it.
yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you want to talk about something else besides urushi?
Oh, well, that's very interesting to me. That's very interesting. Well,
Yeah, I talked to a conservation group about it, and they were quite taking them up, because we have this Bay Area Art Conservation League, and at the museum. So there's a group that gets together, and so I gave a talk for them about that. And after I got back from Japan, when everything was still fresh in my mind.
So what are you doing these days? I mean, what's your schedule like?
Well, these days I do furniture repair. I got to be pretty good at wood repair. And I do antique furniture repair, and I do finishes so that I can do things to look 19th century or 18th century or 17th century or brand new.
Yeah.
And then I can do contemporary furniture, that like really high sheen furniture. And, it's not that interesting, but it pays well in Sausalito. I'm like the one-eyed man in the kingdom of the blind here.
Yeah. And what's the name of your business?
It's called Fine Antique Restoration.
Right.
Richard Morton, Fine Antique Restoration. But you can just say Fine Antique Restoration.
Wow.
And I got a 5-star review on Yelp, so it helps a lot in getting business.
Wow. Wow, that is really interesting. You said you're teaching art or something somewhere?
I teach furniture finishing and restoration on Saturday, and I have an art class on Sunday. But I don't teach it. It's just all us artists get together and we have a model. It's life drawing.
Oh.
We either have a guy or a girl, and these people these are not voyeurs. These are people that are committed to drawing and expressing themselves with themselves and to others through artwork. So, I started doing that in 1988, and it's gone on continually. And we had to take a year and a half off because of COVID, but we're back into the swing of it now again. Because I'm doing it every other week now instead of every single blessed week. It's hard to get the shop cleaned up for it.
Oh, so it's done at your shop.
Yeah, that's what I have to clean. My shop has to be transformed into an atelier, and I do a good job at it. I've had a lot of experience.
Wow.
And I got it cleaned up with the table circulating the model stand, and we have good lighting and stuff. So that happens on Sunday between 11 and 2 o'clock.
Now, wait a minute. You said the circulating model stand?
I didn't say anything about circulating.
Oh, I misunderstood. I had the picture of the model going around.
I have tables circling the model stand.
Oh, you have tables circling the model stand. All right, all right. Now I got it.
Goes up against a wall, and then there's drapery hanging down, and then actually, when I had the Suzuki Roshi chair, we used that for a prop one time, and I have a picture of that, but I can't show it to anybody. But I have a picture of that with a model on it. And,
I see. Yeah. Yeah. That's, wow. We know each other through the San Francisco Zen Center. And I think I came in '66, and you were already there, I think.
Yeah, I came just as soon as I got over. I came from Vermont, and the summer of '65, and in '66, Rob Gove took me on the bus to Sakoji, and he's the one that introduced me to it. Rob Gove is, as you know, he's also a artist in marble, and he went to Carrara, Italy. I don't know where he is now, though. I haven't heard of him.
I think he's still there.
Oh. So anyway, he's the one that brought me to Zen Center.
Yeah.
Originally.
I was in touch with him like 10 years ago.
Oh.
And he was there because of working with the fine marble. Yeah, what an interesting guy. Wow.
Yeah.
Very intense.
I'd like to see some of his stuff now.
I think I have some of it on Cuke.com. I'll check it out and send it to you. Or you can always go there, go to Cuke.com and just write Gove, Gove, or Rob Gove in the site search box, and whatever there is for him will come up. But I'll try to remember it.
How do you spell it?
Yeah.
Is it Cuke?
Cuke.
Ke, like cuke, like cucumber. Okay, cuke.com.
Right. So you came there via the San Francisco Art Institute, as many people did.
Oh, I wouldn't say many.
So many people.
A bunch of us.
Oh,
did.
yeah.
Really?
Oh, look, man, I could read you. I've got a list of people on Cuke.com.
You know, I was at a drawing class at the Art Institute, and in came Rob Gove with Suzuki Roshi. He brought him there, and Suzuki Roshi had his little square brown hat on, and he looked around and grinned at people. He didn't say anything. He just took him to the patio and showed him around a little bit. I didn't talk with anybody. Didn't find out anything about that, why he brought him over. But anyway, he did come over.
When I first came to San Francisco, before I was involved with Zen Center, I'd go to the Art Institute to eat and smoke pot.
Yeah. Well, I didn't smoke pot there, but I did eat a lot, though.
Yeah.
I wasn't too much of a pot smoker. Sometimes I would smoke. The people around couldn't believe it, but I would smoke hash because it enabled me to go to bed early, so I could get up to take my bicycle to Sakoji, and I'd have to ride through the Broadway Tunnel. But, I mean, that's the kind of thing you can do when you're only in your early 20s.
Yeah, wow.
That's how I got there.
Wow.
On a bicycle at 5 in the morning to get there at 5:30.
What, were you living like over near the Art Institute?
Yeah, 2244A Mason Street. It's only like 3 or 4 blocks from the Art Institute.
Wow. And so Rob took you there. So how did that work out?
Well, I mean, obviously it worked out because I stayed, but.
Well, what happened? And what was your experience when you went there?
With Rob or with the
first time you go to Sokoji?
I actually can't remember. The first time I went for 5:30 p.m. Zazen, and I don't remember the first time I sat at all, but I do remember, sitting and getting instruction from Katagiri, and I remember a lot about. I don't remember my very first day I got there. I'll tell you that. I had so much stuff going on and everything in my life then, and it was all brand new too.
Yeah.
But I got right into it. I immediately made a commitment to start going in the morning, and I've been sitting ever since.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that? Just like a lot of us,
Oh, well, about when was that when you first went? Do you remember?
Well, yeah, it was. Of course, it's California has only one big season, but it would have been in the fall time of 1966.
Oh, that's when I came.
Yeah, it would have been about the same time as you came. I came because, without getting into why I started sitting and all of that stuff, but I did start. I had an LSD experience, like a lot of people did, and I was so, I had no idea. I had no experience coming from in Vermont. I wasn't anything mystical or Asian or anything like that. But I said I have to find out more about this. So I went to the yoga this yoga store that sold yoga books on Eastern books on yoga, and I can't remember the name of it. And
Fields.
It was on Powell Street.
Rick sent me an email after this and said it's the Metaphysical Bookstore.
And it sold books on meditation and things like that. And then I called. He gave me somebody to call, and she said, "Well," I said, "I want to come and learn meditation." She said, "Well, here everybody's really old. They're all in their 40s, but not me." She said, "If you want to, why don't you get a younger group?" And she gave me the Zen Center's name, Zen Center's number. And then that's how I did, and that's how I found out about Zen Center. That's the first time I found out about it. And and then and then somehow I connected with Rob Gove, who was a student there at the time anyway. So we went together on the bus.
Yeah, he was a very serious student. He was like, when I started going there, he was one of the sort of people who sort of was an example, like on Saturdays when we had, that work period where we cleaned up. He'd be the eager beaver setting an example and helping other people. And
well, he was like him and Bill Kwong were like that.
Yeah.
Rob did a lot of that stuff. He was very serious, though.
Yes, he was. He was.
He was really, really too serious, really. But I guess he had his reasons.
Well, it's just his character.
It's just his character, yeah.
Yeah, very intense guy.
Yeah.
Beautiful work. Do you remember the first time you met Suzuki? Well, when you came, Suzuki was in Japan. So you started sitting when he was in Japan.
I did.
He was in Japan in the fall of '66.
Well, that's probably why the earliest thing is getting instruction from Katagiri.
Right.
Who was my first. He would have been my first mentor, and Katagiri was a lovable guy and easy to relate to, and very interested in all of us. And that's how I started. And when Suzuki Roshi came back, he was a little more leader, standoffish. Like Katagiri would just kind of pitch in and start talking with everybody. It was very friendly. And Suzuki Roshi would be a little more detached from.
Yes.
And his English wasn't that good either at first. You had to speak really slow. And Pat Hershoff was the guide at that time, and she did a lot of stuff with him, and and we'd ask questions, really fast, and then she would have us ask it a lot slower, and then she'd kind of say it to Suzuki Roshi in English that he could understand.
Yeah. So, do you remember when you first met him?
I can't remember the first time I met him. I remember the first time I talked with him. I remember my first dokusan during the sesshin.
Yeah.
I was having a horrible time trying to decide what to do about my getting married, and I had met Carolyn, and and I said, well, I'm in such a kind of a dilemma that I feel like I can't even sit anymore. What to do about it? Whether to stay here and be an artist or go to Tasahara. I said, I don't know what to do. And he said, that's because you're not there yet. And he gave me a real long talk. It was like 20 minutes, and he even drew a big circle on a piece of paper. He said, you're here, and you have to travel all the way around the circle until you get to the back of it.
Huh.
And I still don't know what he meant by that. But I do remember him telling me, though. But that's the first Dokusan I can remember having with him.
So what resulted from it?
Well, what resulted is that I did wind up going to Tasahara, and I did wind up seeing Carolyn when I came back, and she was still going to the Art Institute. And then eventually, Carolyn came to Tasahara too. But she'll tell you all about it if you talk to her. She has her own.
Yeah, I'm talking to her tomorrow.
She's got her own experience. It's very interesting too.
Yeah. Well, when did you get married?
I got married. I was the first person to ever get married at Tasahara with Carolyn, and
Oh, is that right?
Yeah,
So I was there probably. Yeah.
you were there. We were the first. We were the first couple. Lou Richmond was there playing the. He had like an organ, keyboard, and he was playing that, and everybody got so drunk. David, I can't remember the year, whether it was like, let's see, what would it have been? Could it have been like 72, something like that? But Carolyn was
No, Suzuki wasn't alive in 72.
He wasn't?
No, he died in December of 71.
Okay, so
your marriage was more like 69 or 70.
yeah, okay.
I think you all got married there before Ed Brown, and Meg got married. I think it was the same summer. I think it was 70.
Yeah, but Carol and I were the first to get married then.
Yeah, yeah.
We had our cake was this huge lotus. It was a huge lotus cake. It was outside and people were eating on it and everybody was walking around and there was a bunch of sake and everything. And Suzuki Roshi came over when I didn't really think too much of it. He must have had some sake. He said he was talking about having some wisdom water. And then he was talking to a few of us standing next to me. And he said, well, this is why, people drink, but then they realize they have to still, it's not going to save them from anything. And then they turn to Zazen, something like that, But I was thinking ever since that he must have had a couple of nips of sake because he was going around talking about wisdom water. That's what I told him. We got married, and he said, "Don't be so serious." To me, I was looking grim, because I was feeling grim about that. We were sitting down in Cesar, and he was talking to everybody. I was still under a lot of stress then and strain, because I hadn't really decided. I still had ideas of other kinds of things I could do with my life and everything. But, my life pulled me along that way. And I went along with it. In fact, I had to ask Suzuki for permission. And I didn't ask him for permission. I said, what do you think I should do? And he suggested just getting married. I said, okay. And then he grinned and said, you'll do it? So I think it's the only thing that I ever, almost one of the few things I remember making him happy that I did. He always avoided talking to me. I always wanted to talk to him. He talked to other people, but he wouldn't talk to me.
That's a compliment.
Yeah, I know. I heard you. I think you said that one time, but and I still remember that too. And I was always like trying to seek him out and think, and he would always avoid me. I suppose you could call it a compliment. It's sort of a compliment in a way, but it didn't make me feel good at the time.
Huh.
I mean, it wouldn't be, he didn't, it's not that he wouldn't talk to me if I had, I would make, if I made an appointment with him or went to see him or something like that, which I did all the time. It's just that he wouldn't talk to me extemporaneously outside if we were working around each other, working together.
Well, he didn't like to talk when he was working.
Yeah, I know, but he talked to other people, He always talked, he talked to my brother, he talked to Peter, he talked to David, but Peter Snyder, and, but he always seemed to avoid me. I guess he had his reasons.
That's, like I said, that's a compliment. That means he was taking you seriously.
Yeah, because I told him one time that I felt like quitting, but I didn't. I said, I just felt like leaving, but I didn't. He said, that's very significant. Use that word. So I remember a lot of stuff he said, because when I sit, those things that he said keep coming back to me when I'm sitting.
Like what?
I don't know. Like everything.
Would you have some examples?
Well, if I could think about it enough, I could think of examples.
You mean like these days, when you're working or when you're sitting or walking somewhere, you remember things he said? Yeah,
mostly I remember what he said when I'm sitting, or right after I'm sitting. Then stuff that he said to me comes back to me, or stuff he just said to us too. Yeah. One time he said during my the Shuso ceremony, he told me, I said, I don't know what to do. I'm always trying to decide. And he said, I've always told you, don't try and manage the small self. And then he said, he said, someday you'll understand what it is to like just one thing. He said, I like one thing. It's hard candy. So it was very enigmatic then, and it's very enigmatic now. Yeah. That was a Shosan ceremony. Not Shuso. Shosan. Yeah, Shosan ceremony at the end of Sesshin. Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah. Don't try to manage the small self. Yeah. And then one time I did go to, during one of my Dokusan's, he said, because I was sitting and my legs were really hurting, when they hurt so much, I would just move, and then I would start sitting again. But I could see my mind just like going crazy, but it seemed to detach itself, and it was like I was able to let it spin off like itself, And then I went to a Dokusan, and he sat for a long time with his eyes closed. I was thinking, he said, well, maybe you're trying to keep your back straight, but you need to keep your mudra soft. And I was thinking, how does he know that with his eyes closed? And then he said, he told me I had made a lot of progress, and something, he said, you have something that nobody can take away from you. It was kind of a funny way to put it, Why would you even think about somebody taking it away from you? And I didn't. And then he said, well, sometimes, if you're sitting, this is during the session, he said, well, maybe during, for a few moments, few minutes or seconds it might happen to you in the morning, you'll have real practice. But, I didn't have real practice. But actually I feel now, after all these years, I do feel like I have an understanding that I didn't have back then. Because back then I was always I had kind of a agenda. I was always trying to accomplish something or make myself feel better somehow. And, and my brother had his experiences, and he would talk, people really shouldn't talk about their experiences, I think, but, they do. And you want to hear about them, So I felt like things should be happening to me, and since they didn't, I was depressed, and I wanted something to happen that would change my life, and it didn't. He said one time. He said, well, your problems. I said, maybe I just want something to happen that'll make my problems disappear by like magic. This is what before I got married, and I was going through this dilemma, whether I should get married or not. And he said, well, they do disappear like by magic, like magic. I wouldn't say my problems have disappeared like magic, by magic, but things he said then that seemed so abstruse now seem understandable, really.
Yeah.
And acceptable, And really I do understand. I mean, I don't know that everybody does this, but I have a feeling for things that Dogen is saying, about only keeping that enlightenment and practice is keeping your posture right, sometimes people have a hard time with that, but I don't, Because one time Suzuki Roshi said one time that, here's something he said one time. He went to Japan, and then he came back after that Japanese artist had committed suicide. And then he came back after that and was talking about it. He said before he came to America, he thought that he was worried that he was wondering what kind of problems that Americans were going to have, and he said they didn't have problems with wanting to accrue possessions. They didn't have a problem with that, but what they did have a problem with, that is us, is trying to we had a what is it called, gain-seeking mind or something like that, or what was that expression he used?
Way-seeking mind.
No. It involved gain.
Gaining idea, he would say. We had a gaining idea.
We had a strong gaining idea in the United States. He said that was more of a problem than going without food or trying to live simply,
Yeah.
That was our particular problem, he said.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. That's well said. Right. Yeah. A gaining idea.
Gaining idea. That makes a lot of that. I feel like I understand that more now, and it makes what Dogen says a lot more understandable too. A lot of things of what teachers are saying is they're just trying to get people not to have such a strong gaining idea, or if you have a gaining idea, just not to be so faithful to it.
That's well said. Yeah. The idea of gaining enlightenment, especially, or the idea of regaining some peak experience. He was really big on that. People would have some peak experience, and he'd acknowledge it, but he might just say, "Well, how's your work going?" No, very nice.
Yeah, he would find impediments. That's the kind of way people thought. And
yeah.
David, I was going to mention. You have talked about that incident with John Snyder, didn't you? Before John Steiner.
John Steiner.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go on. 1969.
Yeah, because I was in the Zendo at that time.
Let's hear about it.
All right. So we're all sitting, and people are asking questions, and they're asking, and this is when the marches are going on in Berkeley about the Vietnam War, and people are kind of asking questions. And then John Steiner, who was sitting up close to the ton, said, "Well, what should we do about the war? About demonstrating and trying to stop the war?" And he leapt off the ton, and he kind of smiled because we were all smiling, and his smile reflected our smile. Our smile reflected his smile. His smile reflected our smile, because we thought he was joking. So we were grinning. So he started grinning as he jumped off the ton, and then he started hitting John Steiner all over the place. Now, you said he hit his ear, but he didn't hit his ear. and he just hit him on all the, and he started yelling at him, and he said, "Do you think that I don't care about the?" It's causing me to break up. He said, "Do you think I don't care about the Vietnam people?" That's what he called them. He said,
Yeah.
And then he sat down again. He was very intense. I've never seen him do that. I've never seen him be that dynamic with a group or intense and actually leap off. I mean, I tell you, he leaped. This is like a puma jumping off a cliff onto John Steiner. It was so fast and so spontaneous that it just kind of was like all I could do was gasp. And then I think he sat down again and he said, "The war," because he said, "The war is right here on this tatami."
Mm.
People now feel like, including at Zen Center, including in Vermont, everywhere, they feel like that. But Suzuki Oroshi's idea was not that we should be socially liberal. We should be progressive in a social sense, because he was all about having us understand the Dharma and understand Zazen.
Mm-hmm. There was a peace march that day in San Francisco, and he went to it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I can't remember that.
People took him to it.
Yeah.
And the way it happened was because I've heard about this from many, many people, and you've shed new light on it. That's very interesting. Ron Browning was standing in back, and Ron Browning was very, very intensely interested in stopping the war in Vietnam. And he asked, "Why are we here doing this when we should be out there protesting against the war?" And Suzuki didn't understand him. And then John repeated what Ron said. What he said, Roshi, was, "Why are we here doing this when we should be protesting the war?"
But he also he made it into a question too. He said, like, what should we do about it? That's what I was.
Yeah, right.
He added that, and I think that the way I remember it is that at that point is when Suzuki Roshi leapt off. I didn't know he had so much strength in him. Like a cat can jump up, in 10 feet in the air. I mean, he jumped up off the ton.
Yeah.
All of this energy in him. He had something to say about it.
Afterwards, he told John Steiner, he said, that brought up to me all my frustration that I experienced during the war in Japan.
Uh-huh.
And he said, people say, he said, "How do you expect to stop the war or something if you don't even know how to tie your own shoes?" Do you remember that?
I don't remember him saying that. He could have said, but that's not one of the things I. This is a long time ago, so I don't remember.
Yeah, well, you did add some things that nobody has said that are really good. He at one point, not at that time, he said that he thought there would always be war, but that we should always do whatever we can to stop it. But
yeah, sure, but he had to go through the whole war in Japan without being able to stop it at all. He said one time he was a young monk in Japan, and that's when Japan was in Mongolia, Manchuria, and he said he was carrying a stick. Maybe I don't know whether it was a stick that people use for the Kiyosako or something like that. He said he held it up like a rifle, and the whole Zendo broke into laughing. And he said after that I was very. He felt really bad about it, ashamed of himself, and felt bad. He felt like he had let down his ancestors and his parents and everybody and his teacher by doing that stunt.
Oh. Interesting.
He wasn't rebuked by the teacher. He just, after he did that, he felt ashamed of himself.
Mm-hmm.
He said,
well, what else occurs to you, please? Yeah.
He said I was very angry with the Japanese people during the Second World War. He said I knew we were going to lose. He said because we weren't serious enough. Now, isn't that a kind of a funny thing to say? He didn't think they were serious enough.
Yeah, well.
And then he said one time he said we don't have enough sense of our genia, our ancestry. You know, who came before us, our grandfathers and great-grandfathers. He said that was one thing that Japanese had that we didn't have, that Asian people had that we didn't have that could help us. And he said, because one time he said, you know how I know is because I was watching these Americans in a Jeep, American soldiers in a Jeep, and they stopped at a traffic stop, and they all looked really depressed. So, you know, and he felt like that's because they didn't have a clear idea where they were coming from in their lives.
Mm. Mm.
And their relations and their posterity. Not posterity, what's the word?
Ancestry?
Ancestry, but I mean recent ancestry, you know, like their father.
Lineage.
Lineage is the word I'm looking for. Is that they didn't have? We don't have an idea of our lineage the way that the Japanese did.
Well, you know, in Japan, making offerings to your ancestors is a big deal.
Yeah.
And memorial.
I had a French teacher from the Congo. He was from the Congo, and that was only that was about 15 years ago. And I asked him about the ancestors. He said, when he's a Christian, no, he was a Muslim. He called himself a Muslim. And I said, what about ancestor worship? He said, well, ancestors for us are, you always know they're there. There's always a presence of your ancestors in your life. This is a guy from Africa, but no, I don't know if Japanese feel like that, but it's something. It's a way that we don't feel in America. Most of us don't, anyway. Too much, anyway.
Well, how did your path progress at the Zen Center? I mean, I know you came there. And you ended up at Tassajara pretty early. How long were you at Tassajara?
You know, I was only there for a year and a half.
Uh-huh. With Carolyn.
Carolyn was there. I was there by myself for the first 2 training periods. And then Carolyn, and with my brother, too, with Jim Morton. And then Carolyn came for another training period. She was there for at least 1 training period, but we might have been there for several training periods.
Yeah.
But I think all in all, I would only spend a year and a half there. But you know, it was a very formative year and a half for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then after that, we went and lived. We left Tassajara and we lived next to Page Street. For and then for a few years or a couple of years, I don't remember how much time, and then Ethan was born there. That's why and then we moved to Japan when Ethan was pregnant again. Carolyn was pregnant again, and can you imagine doing that? Japanese said only Americans will do something like that. and then Anne was born in Kyoto. When we were living in Kyoto, our daughter, they called her An-chan. Oh, so what were you asking me before? So I was Tassajara, and we went to, and I lived on. Well, actually, I forgot. You know, we lived in Page Street for I don't know how long. It might have been quite a while, for a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, and then. when Carolyn was there and Jim was there, and I started working at this cabinet shop where I learned my trade that I use right now, and we'd go on our motor scooters from Page Street to Lombard Street, Lombard and Laguna. That's where the shop was on Lombard.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that went on for 5 years, you know. And we left Page Street because Carolyn was pregnant, and so we got an apartment next door, and then Ethan was born at that time. And then after about 3 years, we went to Japan. And Jim had been there, and I had been working for 5 years, and I couldn't stand it anymore. I really couldn't. I mean, 5 years working 5 to 6 days a week, 8 hours a day too, was plenty for me.
And where did you work?
Yeah. Hang on just a second, Dave. Yeah.
Who's that?
It's just a phone. Hello? Bob, yeah, I'm still on the phone right now with David, so I'll call you back or call me in maybe half hour. Okay, thanks. Bye. Okay, sorry, Dave. So what were you saying?
That's an interesting phone ring.
Yeah, it's a quack.
Yeah.
Jim says anybody in Japan would just be like blown away by that. In a not pleasant way either, that somebody would get a phone that sounded like a quack.
That's funny.
It's not something any Japanese would ever do willingly. But I wanted an animal sound, and it was a sound. It was the only animal sound that I could really hear from a distance. That was the duck, and it sounded realistic too, like a duck, which is
yeah. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. So, what's the name of the business where you worked?
Furniture by Gotti, Gatti.
And he was a fine furniture antiquer restorer like that, right?
Yeah, he did, but he makes new furniture, and he's in his mid-80s, and I'll tell you, he's better now. The distance between me and him then is the same now. As good as I could be, he's that much better. It's just amazing.
Wow.
He blows me and Jim away. You know, he's gotten so much better. The stuff that he's made, and he does stuff that only he can do, and his daughter helps him. Nicole was born when we were working there. Nicole, his daughter. Now she's a finisher for his finisher. And, you know, and all his kids were born when we were there. And Ethan was born when I was working there too. So, you know, I didn't know there was such a thing as restoring and finishing and everything.
Right.
I got to put into finishing because when I got there, Paul Rosenblum was still working there doing finishing, and he was getting leave. So I kind of I took over from Paul Rosenblum. He showed me a lot of stuff about finishing, and then after Paul left, I was put in the finishing department, you know, as opposed to doing woodwork, which is what I would have liked to have done. But I'm glad that I can do finishing because I'm one of a kind now. I'm the one-eyed man in the kingdom of the blind. That's what I call
funny. It. So, when you moved to Page Street, how was it practicing there then?
I enjoyed it a lot. I practiced hard. I went to all the sessions. And we had to get up in the morning, and then we made Gatti's start. Our work started at 7:15 because that was the earliest I could get there and still do our 2 periods of zazen in the morning and have breakfast, and then get ready to leave. And then, so we started at 7:15. That's when he still starts at 7:15.
Wow!
Because of that, 7:15 a.m.
Wow!
But I thought Page Street was neat. I really did. It was, you know, all the same people were there, and And it was great. I liked it. There were teachers would come and visit, and Suzuki Roshi was he living there? Yeah, he had his room
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, right above the entrance.
Yeah,
Well,
what about
yeah, right above the entrance.
what about his wife though? Where did she live?
Yeah, they lived together. They had an apartment there.
You mean in the same building?
Yeah, Page Street.
Oh, up on
Just look. You go up on the second floor, go up the stairs, make a right, and it's straight ahead. There at the end of the hall, to the left was the larger room, where he'd give interviews, Doksan and library, and just a little bit to the right was the entrance to their little tiny kitchen, and to the right of that back they had a room or two. They had a whole apartment there.
Yeah, somehow I just can't remember her there. I just can remember him there.
Oh no, she was there. She was there. And she'd walk up, well, I have so many memories of her in the building later on. I mean, she lived there till like 93.
My brother had this very amusing dream that I'll never forget him. He was in his dream, they were in Sakoji, and Suzuki Roshi was sitting, and Okusana was in there cleaning all the spaghetti sauce off the top of Suzuki Roshi's head. He said, "You know the way she was always doing fiddling around doing things," and he said, "Don't bother me when I'm doing zazen. Zazen is paradise." This is part of his dream. You don't have
That's
to.
That's pretty good.
Process, but my brother had great dreams. I wonder if he remembers that dream.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. So why did you decide to go to Japan?
My brother got me to go because I couldn't stand the working at Gaddy's, and he said, work just leads to more work. And if you come here, you don't have to work so hard, and we can combine our powers. And Carolyn wanted to go too, so I went there by myself. And Jim had found us in Jim and Sally Block, Sally Morton, that's his wife. They got married. Where did they get married? I can't remember. Oh, I remember where they got married. Okay, so anyway, but Sally was there too with all of us too. By the way, her name was Sally Block at that time, and so where am I now? And this, what am I talking about? I can't remember.
I asked why you went to Japan. How'd that come about?
Oh, because Jim talked me into going, and I wanted to get out of the job. You know, it was so hard for me to leave Gaddy's. You can't imagine. You know, I talked to somebody else. I talked to this guy from Texas, and I said, this may astound you, but the only way I could quit my job is by going to Japan. He said, no, I had to quit. The only way I could quit my job is by leaving Texas. His name was David Wynn, and he had his own shop in San Francisco. And so it was really hard for me. You know, Gaddy didn't want me to leave, and because I had learned everything. I was useful to him, and I was aware that I learned everything from him. And I was aware that once I left, he's going to have to get somebody else, you know, and he wanted me to stay. He always wanted people to stay, and it was so hard I don't know, it was hard for my brother, but it sure was hard for me. I'm remembering now how hard it was for me to leave. Even though when people said, what do you do? I would start shaking like that because I couldn't stand working 8 hours a day, year after year. You know, this work is really intense. And when people are putting one thing after another in front of you, and you have to get creative, you have to do things really, really nicely too. It takes a lot out of you. And you know what? We used to get paid $2 an hour. That was what my pay was. That even made my parents laugh. And Gaddy said, well, it takes the pressure off the apprentice.
Wow. So you went to Kyoto, right?
Yeah, I went to Kyoto and to this place that I had found, and Carolyn was I said it looks pretty good. It looks old. Like kind of a samurai movie, but it was so tiny. It was as big as our living room that we have now. It was like tiny, but it did have all these separate apartments in it, separate rooms. I mean, it had 2 separate rooms, and it had what the kitchen was called an eel bed. That's what they call them. They were only about 4 feet wide, and they went the length of the house from front to back. And then it was freezing. There was no heat, and there still isn't central heat in Japan. That's why they have kotatsus, and you have to. Japan. You know what I said? I came back after Japan. After the first time I went to Japan, I told people Japan was like Tasahara with motorcycles.
Oh, that's funny.
And
that's funny.
It is too. I mean, you can't see Japanese culture. At least I don't know what it's like now, but in the 70s, Japanese culture and Zen training were unified.
Yeah.
They had the same ideals. The police did zazen. In high school, I taught in high school, and they did meditation in the morning for about a minute. It wasn't very long, and they just the same things that were revered as part of Zen practice. So are the Japanese. At least they were then.
Mm.
So anyway, so that's why I went, and so we inhabited this really tiny little place, and then Carolyn was getting more and more pregnant, and the people were just so nice to us. The very first guests were Jehovah's Witnesses. They couldn't speak English, but they came in with their awake things, and it was all in Japanese, and they were so nice, and they were our first guests.
That's funny.
Jehovah's Witnesses. But I thought we were in Japan for 3 years before we came back, and it was quite an experience being there. I would say between Tasahara and Japan, what a developing experience those two things were.
Yeah. Well, how did things progress when you got there? What you must have looked for a job or something.
I got a bunch of it. Jim and Sally had lined up, and their friends had lined up a lot of English teaching jobs for me.
Yeah.
So all I had to do was start teaching, and the people didn't. They liked it better, and I taught at a couple English schools, and they liked it that I couldn't speak Japanese because they said it preserves your freshness. The people that learned English would rather have learned from somebody that couldn't speak Japanese, because they already, cause Japanese know, they learn to read English, they just can't speak it very well.
That's
so
right.
We were as teachers, we spoke English conversation. We were actually conversation teachers, so
That's
we
right.
actually were.
That's right. Yeah.
We didn't teach them how to write or read because they already could do that.
Yeah.
So our jobs are simple, and then I got a job at these kind of cheapo, there was a lot of do-it-yourself. There was a lot of English schools that people would start because everybody wanted to learn English. There's Takara Gaikei, and these are not school. These are private English schools. Mm-hmm. And I got jobs teaching at these private schools. And then I also had a job eventually at Nishiko, where this just Japanese high school where Jim was teaching. So I started teaching there too. And then I started teaching at Get Banks and taking this, and they were all happy to. They really liked. They were really nice. They were really nice to us. They were really, really, really nice. Except I got fired one time from a job.
Why?
Because I got fired because, let's see, And we were on the radio. I mean, Carolyn and I were interviewed on the radio and everything like that. But he was enraged because I said I was going to come and pick up my check. And I was coming back from Osaka on my motorcycle, and it was cold, and I decided not to. I decided to go directly home, and that made him so mad that said I was coming and that I didn't come. That he drove all the way to my place with a letter of dismissal that night. I heard him put, and he stuffed it in my mailbox. And then he went off. It blew my mind. I don't think I've been fired for anything before. No, nothing like that.
Yeah, for a reason like that. That's great.
And he said that's what he didn't like about Americans is that he told me what he didn't like about Americans. He just said they just behave like slobs. They would just say something and not do it. And then I didn't think much of it. And then in his mind, I didn't go there because I didn't want to. I was tired from working all day, and I was on my motorcycle. And I decided, why would I, instead of going to there, but they had apparently been waiting for me. And so,
yeah.
And I didn't show up, so I got fired. People may not understand it, but I bet Japanese would understand it.
Yeah,
but,
I understand it.
Looking back on it, I can see where, I did put a lot of people out of joint by being late for things and not showing up. But this time, this is a guy that owned his own business, had a business, so.
Yeah,
he had to crack the whip, and so so that's what happened.
We never worked for anybody in Japan. We worked for ourselves. We had our own, in a sense, we had our own English conversation school.
Yeah, I know. But if you work for a Japanese business, it's a little bit different.
Yeah, you get paid a lot less for one thing.
You get paid a lot less. Well, you get paid a lot less if you work for what's that English school? Berlitz. Berlitz didn't pay. Jerome went there and he got paid shit.
Yeah.
Probably like the equivalent of $6.50 an hour. Meanwhile, we were making $30 an hour on our own.
Yeah, right. And when I was there was later when the yen was very high. I mean, we were making $100 an hour and stuff like that.
Yeah, Jim and Sally were just piling it up. They made so much money because of that.
You were there teaching English. Were you involved with any Zen there?
Yeah, I sat at Antaiji.
Wow. How was that?
Antaiji was it was tough, man. Let me tell you about it. I'll tell you about it in a second. Because we were just down the hill from them, and they were up the hill. That was that area of Japan was called. I can't remember. The name will come back to me. Kitaku.
Kanto?
Kitaku.
Oh, go on.
Kita is north. It's north something. But that's where actually Antaiji was in Kitaku, same as our college. So I would go up there and sit in the morning, and they were tough nuts. And it was cold and it was hard, and they would sit for 50 minutes, and they never did any chanting there. They had the idea from Uchiyama Roshi that that chanting was kind of a way of distracting your mind. So there would be no chanting, and Dick Baker wasn't very approving of it. And then I had something happen to me that I kind of like talking about, but it's almost the only time in my life I've ever been slapped, like really hard. And now when I was in a sesshin and my nose was making noise. It was whistling. And it got the guy, I can't remember. Jim would know his name, but I can't remember. It was the head teacher, not Uchiyama Roshi. I never met Uchiyama Roshi, but it's his place, and he had me come outside, and then he put his hand way back, and then he went like about 90 degrees, 180 degrees, and then he whacked me on the cheek, and he said, "That noise is not zazen." and then somebody translated it for me. One of the for him, I mean, right away. One of the foreigners there. And this astounds people, but for me, the first thing that went through my mind is, what a cool story this is going to make.
That's great.
And it didn't hurt. It didn't hurt. I was so cold. All it did was kind of brought a feeling of warmth to my face. It was like being hit by a Kiyosaku. But people don't take it that way. I talked to this guy. We had a teacher named Lee, and he had an expression of horror on his face because he was listening. Because people don't understand in the United States. I don't know what they don't understand about, but anyway, this is the way Japanese are. This would not be an unusual thing in Japan.
Yeah.
And then when I was in Japan, I took kendo a lot too. I started there. I did it for 3 years there, and I did it for 10 years in America. That kendo is the way of the sword. And this didn't happen to me, but I know that the Japanese are really tough on each other. They drag each other around. It's like hazing. But it wouldn't happen in America. It couldn't happen in America, but I bet it would happen in England. I felt like England was quite similar to Japan in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Sense of humor and structured life. More similar to England Japan is more similar to England than it ever was to America.
Yeah. Yeah. Island imperial countries.
Maybe, yeah. But I thought that this was it was hard. The sessions there, you're so cold, and the sittings were 50 minutes long, and then we had keening after that. It was really hard to do. It happens in other countries like England, and because I'm watching The Crown right now, and where they go to the kids are recounting this. Instead of diverging to that, the people had in boarding schools in England, they were struck by teachers, and they got their hands slapped and everything. Well, anyway, Japan is like that, probably still is.
Yeah, they both have long histories, very old histories.
But I was surprised that Americans. Then I also Taiji sold their land for a real lot of money, and they moved up north. I never did see where they moved to, so this is shortly before I left Japan. So I started sitting at Daitokuji then, and that wasn't too far away either. Yeah. And Kabori Sensei, I think that was his name, was my teacher then, and that was a Rinzai. And so
right.
He had us working on koans. So that was the only koan I've ever done in my life.
What koan was
it? He said, where the koan was, where does the breath come from? And the only thing, when it started working, is I said, I don't remember what I said, but I said something really loud. It just kind of thundered out of my stomach. And he said, okay. And then he changed it to, he evolved the, I call it a koan, because what else would it be, But after he evolved it, my koan evolved, but at that time, Carolyn was leaving because, well, it's hard to talk about really, but you see, Ethan is our son, and he's developmentally disabled, and we didn't know that until about 3 years into living in Japan, maybe 2 years. And I went to, so our house is owned by a yochien. Yochien is a means nursery school. I don't know what it means, but it's a nursery school
right.
Anywhere in Japan, and we were on the yochien property. They owned our house. I forgot about that, by the way. That's because that's kind of important, And so Ethan was going to school there. But they didn't understand what could be wrong with him because a lot of the foreign kids, would act kind of strange because they couldn't speak any of the language. But when I went to see him, I could see right away that there was something psychologically really wrong with him. You know, he didn't look very good at all. He looked really horrible, and I could see there was more to it than just him not knowing the language. So we went to this. You know, we found this place, this Mrs. Yoda, and I don't remember her, the teacher was American, but the Japanese assistant was her assistant was Japanese, and they were social workers, and they worked with us, you know, and so it was decided that Ethan should be tested in the United States, and so Carolyn and Ethan went back before, and I stayed there for another couple of weeks trying to wrap things up. And meanwhile, I was going to this session in Daitokuji, you know, and then when it was finally time for me to leave, I just had to leave. I think I even had to leave in the middle of session. So there, you know, they were all like foreigners in the session. And these are like, I just remember foreigners, you know, from other countries, non-Japanese people. And Taiji had a lot of foreigners there too, but they seemed to be able to speak Japanese, so they were there for quite a while.
Yeah, yeah. Incidentally, children who, you know, go to nursery school and kindergarten and everything in Japan, they learn Japanese really quick from each other. Oh, yeah. Children learn language so quick it's not understood how they learn it so quick.
One of my English classes was for Mrs. Wakisaka was all preschool kids, and I developed my own techniques for teaching English. I called it action English, and I would fall down on the floor, and I'd have everybody else fall down. They thought it was the funniest thing, and the teacher was making a video of me, and the kids could speak. When they learned a word, they spoke it with no accent, just like an American. It was amazing. Like kids that are 2 and 3 years old, they would just say the word like I would say it. English word.
Yeah. That's really interesting. It's really interesting. Yeah. Now, all right. So you're doing kendo. You said you did kendo there too, and you were sitting at Taiji and later at Daitokuji with Kobori, who many people from America who've been over there studied with.
Oh, I see.
And but you also got involved with the urushi, the lacquer.
That was
how did that come about?
Like a year before. I had been doing that for about a year before we left. Oh, because I saw.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah. You know, I saw these most amazing things, and out of lacquer work, and Jim knew what it was, and they knew people that were considered national treasures in Japan, and so I went and I met at least one of them, and he was a lacquer artist. And I was thinking, well, because I knew I was going to eventually go back to the United States, and maybe why don't I learn restoration at Kyoto University or Kyoto Museum? But I didn't, you know, because I just wanted to keep making money, and I learned, you know, bought some tools, and I was going to and I went to this industrial art school in downtown Kyoto, and that's where I started learning about. That's where I learned the urushi from, not from one guy. There was a teacher and then a teaching assistant, and then I went. This is because my Japanese was improving all the time. I learned. I went to take classes in takamaki, which is like raised urushi painting, and then I also started doing a calligraphy, and I found the guy that Jim studied with for years. I just went to a few classes of his. So I was doing all kinds of stuff. You know, I was doing urushi, and I was doing not really at the same time, I don't think. And then I did shodo, which is calligraphy, from this very famous guy that Jim can tell you about. And well, his name was Morita Shuryu. So I did a lot of stuff there, and different times. Because the thing is that you don't have to work all the time like you do in the United States, which is why I went to Japan anyway. All you have to do is, there were foreigners that they would work like 1 hour a week.
I know.
So I had a lot of time and I had a lot of energy in Japan, and we were both quite young. I didn't feel young anymore at that time, but I was. And, we were in our 30s, so we had a real lot of energy. I mean, I never got tired or anything then, so I could do all that stuff.
Yeah.
I thought it was a great experience for me. And also, I could use my Japanese, too.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that came about naturally. Hey, one thing about Kyoto that I remember is that it gets very cold in the winter and very hot in the summer. It's like in a bowl, and it's the heat doesn't escape well. And so I always found Kyoto is best to go in the fall or the spring there.
Yeah, I know. Our place was just amazing. It is so hot in the summer and it's so miserable in the wintertime.
Yeah.
Well, you can see how that's how Zen developed that way. And people wore bare feet with little straw sandals in the wintertime, and for all I know, they still practice that way when they're doing during their begging practice, which I can't remember, the name escapes me.
Takuhatsu.
Yeah. They tie these.
Right.
Oh, I forgot to tell you that I also we used to go to Hoshinji. It was in Harada Roshi was our teacher, and
now there's two Harada Roshi teachers in Obama, but Hoshinji is Seiki Harada. Wow, you sat with him.
I had books there, and I did a bunch of sessions there, and Peter Schneider was there, and Jane Westberg would go there, and Jim would go there, and they had American monks there, and they would do all the translating during Dokusan, and that was a little easier than Antaiji. Antaiji was just really rough. It was like Antaiji was like Japanese kendo, and somebody could just to have somebody slap you, for example. But I was into it really. I thought that was cool. I was like part of Japanese. I was having a real Japanese experience. And I didn't understand where Americans would go and they would flip out because they would be hit by the Kiyosaku. I mean, why even go to a country if you're going to take that attitude?
When Katrinka and we went and spent 10 weeks in Japan 8 years ago before we settled in here in Bali, and went back to Sogenji in Okayama and stayed there a few days. And they're not hitting people with the stick who are guests. I think she said unless they ask for it.
I see.
But they've softened up a lot there. And the tradition in Rinzai has so much violence in it, teaching-related violence.
Physical endurance is big there. And they would you sit facing in. You don't face the wall, you face the opposite. And they come up and they look at you really closely, holding the stick up. They see if they see that you're not focused in a way that then they touch you with a stick.
Right.
And you bend way down forward. And when they hit you with a stick, they lay it over your whole back. And I'll tell you, it knocked the breath out of me, and immediately perspiration came to my forehead, like in an instant. And they hit you on both shoulders, of course. But it was really, it was a different experience than just being hit in a regular by the Kiyosaku at Zen Center.
Yeah, which, there is no Kiyosaki Zen Center anymore.
I know.
Went out a long time ago. Went out pretty much in America. I don't know where they use it. They might in some places. So then you came back to America. What years were you in Japan?
We came back. We were there 75 through 78.
Yeah. And what'd you do when you came back?
I immediately, first I thought I would teach English, but I didn't want to teach. I needed to do something that made money, and this is something I could do. And I just started doing what I'm doing now. And I got a shop space on Folsom and 8th Street in San Francisco. And I didn't have any trouble attracting customers at all. And I had, and I had a lot of good, very, very good contacts. And also people were interested in me because I could still speak Japanese to some extent. And, and I was sort of like, had the Japanese experience, and I knew an awful lot about fixing things and restoring things and finishing things. Dave?
So, you've sort of come full circle there. You came back and you started doing that work then, and you've been doing it ever since.
Yeah.
What about Zen practice? What did you do about that when you came back?
I tried to do as much as I could.
With where? Where? With whom?
We sat at Page Street a lot. As long as I.
Yeah.
Well, we lived in San Francisco for a long time, and even after we moved to Sausalito, I used to come over and do sessions at Page Street. And I don't really know why I stopped doing it. It's just kind of tapered off somehow. I don't know why, but.
Yeah.
But it did, Oh, I know what happened is when Steve Stuckey, because Carolyn was sitting with Steve.
Did you go to Green Gulch much?
Oh, yeah. And I went to Green Gulch. We would go on Sundays, and I did as many sessions as I could and still maintain a business. And, then when Steve started, I ran into Steve Stuckey when I was going to Goodman's at this building supply store, and I had seen it before.
Right.
And he just kind of, I didn't, and then he said, well, we do have a sitting place, but then Carolyn started sitting with him, and she really liked the group. It reminded her of Sakoji's when it was small and more informal, and so I started sitting there, and I had just finished a Ryohatsu session at Zen Center, and I went over to pick Carolyn up, and she told Steve he just did a Ryohatsu session, and Steve said, "Oh, well then you should do one here because theirs was just starting." He was trying to talk me into doing two, but I didn't want to do two, one after back to back. but that was his idea. So I started sitting there, and we started reading out of Suzuki Roshi's book, and it was great. It was nice, I did it, and I just little by little I stopped. And then we still did sessions, but it was a little harder for me to physically sit, and my jobs were demanding, and I didn't want to give up so much time. But I really miss those sessions. Now Carol Paul is going to be sitting in Berkeley in a little while. She suggested I could sit with them on Zoom. So I'll try a day. But it's painful to sit now though, because my knees hurt normally. But I can sit in a regular, Indian style though.
We had to stop here for a minute because a woman came to the door and wanted to know if Rick could help her fix a lampshade. And he said no, he couldn't. Spent a little time telling her where to go.
Yeah, she's got other stuff for me. I'm in a really good spot here. It's a beautiful location that anybody wants to come to Sausalito should visit me here and take, they can come to a life drawing on Sunday too if they want.
Yeah.
But if you're in a park, where else are they going to let you spray lacquer in the middle of a park? I've been here so long. The city is very supportive to me too. I'm the longest lasting person here. This is like my life. Yeah, I've been here since 1992. Everybody else comes and goes. It's just that I have an odd life. I'm just an odd duck. That's what I am. I started Zazen in '65. I'm still doing it. I'm still married to the same person. Still doing the same job. Kind of weird.
Yeah. Well, you're very stable. You're very
I'm not
stable.
really stable,
well,
but I am very. In that way, I am kind of stable.
Yeah. Well, is there anything you'd like to conclude with? Anything we haven't touched on you'd like to mention?
Gee, I don't know. I'm sure that there is. I can conclude with the fact that I've never been able to replace Suzuki and Katagiri with some other teacher. Maybe if I was in Japan, I would have liked Harada Roshi. I did like Harada Roshi, but I've never found the same. And I've read things by other Americans that I liked, but I've never met the Americans. Joko Beck I liked what she wrote, but I've never found anybody to replace Suzuki Roshi and Katagiri and that experience I had, and I don't feel that no teacher has their stature. They're all kind of versions of us. As they're kind of like I feel like everybody else is sort of my contemporaries, even if it's not true. We started out together, but those guys were different. They came from another country. They had a totally different perspective, and they started when they were kids, and they were very inspirational. If only they had died so young.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought Suzuki Roshi was a little old man when I met him. Was younger than I am now, way younger.
Yeah, he was. When he died, he was 11 years younger than you are now.
Yeah, I thought he was ancient when I met him when I was a kid in my 20s. I thought he was kind of a feeble old guy, but he wasn't feeble. No, he had a lot of energy and strength, and he used to go on treks with us at Tassajara and slide down the mud and stuff. He had great balance. He just had a lot of physical power, energy. But it's not really a great way to end. But it's just that I'm if I could get back to that period, I would love to go back. Yeah, and it does make me wish that I could have stayed longer. I told Suzuki Roshi I would like to be a monk. I didn't really want to be a monk though, but I said, but I do have I'm kind of inspired to want to be a monk. He said, well, if you're lucky, you can be a monk after you get married and have a family, or during that time. He said, look at me. He said it's very complicated, but I've worked it out. Having a family and children and a wife and everything.
Mm-hmm.
He found his coming out of that. So So I feel like now, what I realized yesterday in Zazen, that's fitting, that's been helping me, is that everything is energy. Now, if you think everything is energy, which it is, even distracted energy, it's just energy, and you shouldn't think that you have to simplify your life so that you can practice. You can practice right now I mean, simplifying your life helps, but it's not. There's no really. I don't think there's a prerequisite to have to practice. You just need to want to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
If your mind is spinning out of control, then that's your practice. Your mind is spinning out of control. That's the state of your energy.
Yeah.
These are just all energy states. That's what Dzogchen tries to teach. That's the Tibetan version of Zen.
Yeah. I'd say that Suzuki said very much the same thing you just said. In fact, I was just dealing with a lecture of his where he said, you have this idea of you want to come to a calm place where nothing's distracting you. He said, if you want to find real calmness, be in a noisy place.
Mm-hmm. He said, we were reading out of his book yesterday because we have a Zoom on Monday for NZM, and
you're talking about Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind.
And he's talking about gaining enlightenment before you're enlightened.
Yeah.
And it kind of made sense to me, in a strange way that I can't explain. It seems so true. Like what we're talking about. You practice with what you have. Christine agreed with this too. That Zazen is easy because all you do is you practice with what comes up.
Yeah.
You don't have to make your mind a certain way. You don't have to stop thinking. You don't have to be a good person. Forget that. And, because just forget it, believe me. You're not going to be a good person. You can be a better person than you are, but you're never going to. I find, and events seem to support this too. But I just feel like I'm understanding this a lot more. That everything's on just a level of energy, and at a level of energy, you work with it as energy. Distracted mind. You sit. When you sit, you let your mind be distracted. In a way, you could say no, you're just daydreaming and stuff like that. But I'm not talking about daydreaming and being unaware. I'm just talking about being aware of your state of mind, or aware of what comes up when you're sitting, and also what comes up when you're not sitting too.
Yeah. Well, that's very impressive. I agree.
Anyway, it's something that I can understand now better than for some reason, I understand it now and I couldn't before, and I don't know why. But it's one of the benefits of getting old, I think.
Yeah. Yes, there's various ones.
There are benefits to being old. There's reasons why you can have a peace of mind as an older person.
Yeah.
Because as a younger person, you're always after something.
Yeah.
Like I wanted to start my business, and then I wanted to be good. Then I wanted to be the best. I was sure I was the best, and I wanted to be the best, and I wanted people to think of, all of that stuff is not. That's an overlay that kind of interferes with your. If you don't have that, then I think your sitting is different.
Yeah.
You just appreciate the energy state of things.
Yeah.
Listen, I really enjoyed this, Dave. It's meant a lot to me.
Yeah, me too. Listen, if things occur to you, I should have said so-and-so, just write them down and send me an email.
Yeah. Well, how long it takes to get here from Indonesia? It's got to go halfway around.
Well, yeah, it depends on what way. Let's see. The quickest is probably to fly from here to Singapore, and then which is 3 hours, 2.5 hours, and then Singapore to San Francisco, probably about 16 hours or something.
Wow, that's a bit of a.
Yeah, I've never been back.
Oh, you haven't?
No.
Well, at least you can get your teeth done cheap there. Dental work.
Yeah, yeah, dental work here is very good. I've had dental work done in Thailand, Japan. I do not recommend Japan.
No, nobody does, including Jim.
Yeah. Oh, they're crazy.
Yeah.
People would go to a dentist there, 15 times to get something you've done one visit in America. It's very strange. Well, I don't know about now. I mean, I lived there 30 years ago. Here, let's see. Some things are comparable here, like Katrinka got implants. And that was expensive. They cost like almost $1,000 each. That
Well,
was
what?
like America.
That's what they charge. No, that's what they charge in Mexico.
Yeah. And now the cheapest and best is probably India. I really got good dental work done in India. Wow.
Oh, really?
And the thing about going to these places, they have new equipment. America has a lot of old equipment. The last thing you want is old X-ray machines. You want digital X-rays. I had a dentist in Chennai, in India, who had digital X-rays. Would charge, $10 to about the equivalent of $10 to clean my teeth and everything, and 25. Maybe it was $10 to fill a cavity, and God, I got a crown for like 25 or something. I can't quite remember. I got bridges and on each side and 5 crowns for about $1,500.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not free.
No, that's more like Mexico.
Yeah, yeah.
What you're talking about is that's so low. India. I mean, it's almost worth going to India if you can get those kind of prices with good dental work.
I have a really good friend in Rajasthan, and I got hold of him about Katrinka going there. Thing is, the flight there and back and staying there was so much difficulty, but the prices were much better, and they're high quality. And another reason, and this is really important, is that it's better to do it where you live because you definitely need follow-up. And so to really do it well in one place, you have to be there a while. And better to do it where you live, I think. America's gotten into this capitalist trap, and it's natural. It happens. It happens anywhere. The rich getting richer, and the prices going up, and whatever company it is, their only goal is to make more and more money. So everything gets more and more expensive. It was so much easier in America when I was growing up. Oh my God. Poor people could own homes and things were more accessible. But those things tend to be cyclical, but I don't know now. I think that the cyclical might be running into a brick wall. We'll see. Anyway, a lot of things here are much cheaper. Labor, incredibly. And, somebody who does what you do, you pay, like $14 a day or something.
Well, I guess I won't go there looking for customers then.
But see, that's if you're hiring them to do stuff in your home. But if you were making things in a shop, there's so many craftsmen here. My God, doing so many things. But you could make more by selling things. Not charging for labor, charging for the job or something. But I pay people what they ask. And that's pretty much $14 a day. And that's electrician, carpenters, rent. The rents can be much cheaper Here it's just more affordable, you know. Anyway, yeah, well, it's been really good talking with you. Yeah, you think of anything, yeah, just write it down. Send me tons of emails with, just, you don't have to say everything at once. Just one little thought, send it, and I'll collect them. Well, very good. A pleasure speaking with you. That's really interesting stuff.
Well, thanks a lot, Dave. Thanks for calling me. And when I think about something, yeah, well, he says he could have done. He's not happy with what he said. Really, he would have liked to have said it differently.
Well, we agreed I'd call him later, like in a month or something, and do another one.
Yeah. Okay.
So he'll have another chance. What he said was great. Was most interesting. And since Jim's podcast has been up, he's listened to it and says, "Oh, well, that's not so bad."
Oh yeah, I think what he says is really interesting. Sure. Jim talks about his experiences, but Carolyn's are completely mind blowing.
Well, I'm going to talk to her tomorrow.
Not that you'll get her to talk about them, but she has had really profoundly. Yeah, no, Carolyn's got a good base.
Yeah.
In spirituality.
Yeah, well, she can talk about what she wants. I don't, I let people talk about what they want. So I'm calling her tomorrow at 7.
Yeah. 7 in the evening?
Yep.
In the morning? In the evening?
Evening.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, yeah, reminder. Okay.
I will.
All right. Take care.
Nice talking to you.
Good talking to you. All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So thank you very much, Rick. That was good. Appreciate it. And when I need to have something refinished or restored, that is the sort of thing you do, I will get hold of you immediately and fly you here to Bali and let you do it. Or I'll ship it to you there, and you can ship it back. Okay. This has been a Cuke Audio Podcast. I'm DC Puba of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, coming to you from sleepy Sanur with Dogga Bandita, Feline Cuchita, and dear lovely Katrinka. And we're wishing you and yours and all of us a grand awakening.